The PGA Tour is in the heartland for the John Deere Classic in Silvis, Illinois. TPC Deere Run began hosting this event in 2000. Because there was no event in 2020, this is the 25th playing of the tournament at this venue. Davis Thompson is looking to become the first back-to-back winner of the John Deere Classic since Steve Stricker won 3 in a row from 2009 through 2011. Last year, Thompson set a tournament record when he finished at 28 under par. Now, Hailey Hunter is on site at TPC Deere Run for us this week. And Hailey, you have more on what it takes to succeed at this familiar venue.
Hey, thanks, Eamon. You know, it's always a type of tournament out here where you're going to see some really low numbers, but that's also what makes it so much fun to watch this golf tournament. As last year, the John Deere Classic saw 2,055 birdies out here, which was more than any other event on the PGA Tour in 2024. In fact, the tournament here last year that had the second most birdies on the PGA Tour, the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson, still had 75 less birdies. So players know coming into TPC Deere Run that they are going to have to put up some low numbers out here. 12 of the last 15 years, we've seen that winning total at least 20 under par. And as you just mentioned, Davis Thompson, the winner here last year, really setting that bar extra high with his 28 under final total on Sunday, which of course is now the tournament scoring record. And with that, the reason he found so much success is he was really good with his wedges, dialing those wedges into the greens and giving himself a lot of birdie opportunities. You're going to see players about half of their approach shots out here this week coming from within about 150 yards and in. So a lot of wedges out here, and that makes you wonder who's good from that distance. If you take a look at the best wedge players on the PGA Tour right now, from 50 to 125 yards out, you'll see names such as Jackson Suber, who ranks second on tour from that distance. He just finished tied for 6th at the Rocket Classic last week. Paul Peterson ranks third, along with Doug Ginn, Max McGreevy, and Emiliano Grillo. Meanwhile, some of the best putters out here this week, that's going to be really important. Sam Ryder, Brant Snedeker, Nico Echeverria, and Jacob Bridgman, who's also specifically one of the best putters from 10 to 20 feet, which we're really going to see a lot of this week. And earlier, I made my way out to the course to check in with some of these players on how they plan to best manage a very scoreable course like this one that certainly rewards those really good wedge hitters as well as that good putting.
Yeah, it's a little bit more position golf this week for sure. So I think it's more of a, give yourself as many chances at birdie as you can. So it's a lot more just get it in the fairway and then let your, short irons do the work.
I think the key out here is getting yourself as many birdie looks as possible. Guys are going to be going low, so keeping yourself in the fairway is huge. Gives you a better opportunity to get it close onto some of these bigger greens. So that's kind of the big key out here, is being in the fairway.
Not one of the longer courses, too. How often do you plan to use driver off the tee out here?
Actually, a pretty decent amount. I think the further you can get it up and give yourself shorter clubs into the greens, the better off you are. There's not a ton of trouble off the tee, but if you're in the rough, it's tough. But further up you are, if you're hitting through or driver, then it's more of an advantage for sure.
There's a couple 3-woods and hybrids off some tees. Call it 14 tee shots. I'd probably say there's 9 or 10 drivers, and then a couple mix of 3-woods and hybrids on some holes. So driving it is important out here. You can attack a lot of the. It's a place where scores tend to be low. You can still somewhat play from the rough, but to really be attacking and shooting some scores, you got to drive it in the fairway.
And lastly, just how important are those wedges out here? It looks like you guys are going to have a lot of those shots from 150 and in.
Yeah, I haven't been on the course yet. I'm going out here shortly, so I haven't seen the firmness of the greens, but wedges are all, this course presents a lot of opportunities with some short clubs, and so, you definitely got to take advantage when you get those wedges in your hands. Even when they tuck the pins out here, guys seem to find ways to make birdies with those scoring clubs, so driving it in the fairway and then, taking advantage with the short clubs is definitely key.
It's definitely a scoreable course. You got to drive it relatively straight, but yeah, it's all about scoring. Hitting your short irons well, wedges well, and then putting is a big thing here too.
Is short game a challenge around the greens as well? I remember you guys a couple years ago when I was here saying the rough can get pretty thick there if you leave yourself short.
Yeah, it's a little bit spotty, so there's some thick areas and some thinner areas, but really you just don't want to short side yourself, so you kind of want to because there are so many birdies and low scores, you really don't want to make too many bogeys. So you want to give yourself an opportunity to get it up and down when you can.
We just heard the players talk about how thick the rough can get out here. It's certainly no Oakmont rough, but they do have it grown out to about 4 inches, which they'll plan to have going into the weekend. And some of the rough around the green is really where we've heard players in the past struggle a little bit. We just heard some of the players talk about the importance of not short-siding yourself, and that is because some of that rough in and around the greens is a little more challenging. That is what they're trying to challenge players with the most out here, considering how scoreable the course is overall in the other areas as well, guys.
Well, Hailey, the John Deere is the 30th event of the regular season, just 5 weeks remaining until the start of the playoffs. Among the notable players in the field in that top 70 bubble, last week's playoff loser, Chris Kirk, Davis Thompson, the defending champion, Rickie Fowler, Carl Phillips. Understand, Hailey, that you had an opportunity to catch up with one of those bubble players earlier today.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Talk with Rickie Fowler just a little bit ago. This is such a crucial week for so many of those players that are right on that top 70 playoff bubble right now, as the majority of this 156 player field, those players aren't in the top 70. So a really critical week for those guys. And talking with Rickie earlier, we talked about the fact that there's only 3 full point U.S. events left going into those playoffs. So he knows this is a really important week for him. And this is what he had to say about his mindset coming into the John Deere Classic, which he last played all the way back in 2010.
Just need to execute and play some good golf. This is a place we haven't been at in a long time, and excited to be back here. I feel like there's been a lot of good stuff with my game as of late. Obviously, last week wasn't anything special, but I know there's good finishes right around the corner. So, yeah, we'll see if we can get a few good weeks and put ourselves in a good spot for August and postseason.
I know the first and the last time I believe that you were here was back in 2010. So from what you heard about this course and what you remember, what do you feel the part of your game needs to be brought to the next level to have success out here?
I feel like there's enough room out here. There's a couple tough or good driving holes, but yeah, I think for me, driving the ball well and putting myself in position where I can go ahead and play, offense or aggressively from there will definitely help. So I think that's first and foremost, kind of get the ball in play, and hopefully everything kind of, can feed off of that.
What parts of your game do you feel like are trending in the right direction where you want to be right now?
I feel like a little bit of everything. Okay. I feel like putting's been here and there, some good days, some off days. I kind of can say that with just about everything, but no, it's been good to see that at least everything can work. It's still there, so just trying to stay patient and so build some confidence and momentum.
Is there a little bit of extra pressure considering there's just 3 U.S. events that are full points left leading into the playoffs, or are you just kind of trying to treat this like any other week out here?
We know the time frame, know where we're at in the season, but good golf solves a lot of things. So, looking forward to this week and then going over the pond for the British and being at, Portrush, and then we'll kind of figure out in the next couple of weeks what the plan will be post-British, because obviously you want to be in the playoffs, but you also want to be fresh and ready to go play. But if we need to play leading in, then we're going to play.
Of the 30 players that are ranked between 60th and 90th in the FedExCup standings right now, 20 of those 30 players are here at the John Deere Classic this week. So when it comes to those standings moving up and down, we're likely going to see a lot of that here this week. It's a big opportunity for a lot of those playoff bubble players, including Rickie Fowler. And important to keep in mind that 24 of the last 53 winners here at the John Deere Classic have been first-time winners. So we may just see somebody win for the first time on the PGA Tour, and with that, move themselves up 30 to 35 or so spots and take somebody else's spot in that top 70 playoff bubble, guys.
Every opportunity counts for a lot these days. Thanks, Hailey. Ryan, Rickie Fowler, sort of an enigma these days, because if you go back to, we talk a lot about his ball striking and how that's been an issue, but this is a guy who led the PGA Tour in putting 2017. He's 100th now. He had a top 15 short game for most of the early part of his career. He's outside the top 130 now. He's making a lot of cuts, but 2 top 10s in 40-odd starts since he won in Detroit a couple of years ago. That's a lot of cuts, but not a lot of progress.
I think when you hear Rickie sort of diagnosing what's going on with his game currently, one thing he didn't mention in particular was his approach play. Keep in mind, just 2 years ago, he was the 7th best iron player on the PGA Tour. It's really hard to be competitive on today's PGA Tour without an elite iron play. I think a perfect example is what happened last week with Rocket Classic winner Aldrich Potgieter. Missing a boatload of cuts, one of the worst iron players on the PGA Tour. What happens? He makes an equipment tweak. All of a sudden, he has his best iron performance of the year in Detroit, and now he's the first-time PGA Tour winner. Rickie Fowler is outside the top 100 in strokes gained approach. You do not see any elite player in that sort of vicinity. So while he's seeing upticks in his driving, certainly seeing upticks with his putting, that's really the main part of his game that's holding him back. And as you just heard in Hailey's report, that's going to be such a premium on knocking down flags this week.
And he doesn't really have a huge weapon these days. 36 years old. Has he aged out of the phenom category? Is it likely that Rickie Fowler's best days are behind him rather than ahead of him?
It's possible. I still think it's possible for him to play steady, consistent golf, still be a top 50 player on the PGA Tour. Again, we're just 2 years removed from him being an elite player on the PGA Tour statistically and also being a champion. But there's certain aspects of his game that he has to clean up if he wants to get back to the upper echelon.